Nice to have you here for our second feedback. This is really okay. I'm Daniel. This is Manolo. We're going to be doing the feedback cafe together. Hello. So I'll do it just so that everyone can hear. I think more people will join in, and also some people are listening even though they're sat across the room. This one is working better. Okay, so we'll just pass this one around. What we're going to do is we're going to look at we're going to talk about the three shows we saw yesterday and Tom's show that was on Tuesday. And we'll do it in order, so we'll start with Romain Daniel, and then we'll go to Nico and Paul, and then we'll go to Tom, and then we'll finish with Mark. That's not, is it us? Is it somewhere over there? Okay. It's okay. We're gonna keep on going. The way that we're gonna do it is, if each company, if you could introduce yourselves and give us some context about the piece. And you can decide what that context is, but things that are useful for us to know is when you started working on it, why you started working on it, where you're at in terms of the process. Is it a finished piece? Is it a piece that's still developing? What iterations it's gone through. I guess the big question of why now? Why this story and why now? That's what always interests me, but maybe we'll get to that later. And then I've also got some questions from the feedback forms that people filled in yesterday. So people who can't be here today have left feedback forms. So we'll start with Previsão do Tempo, weather forecast, Romain Teul and Daniel Pizzamillion. If you could just give us a bit of context.
So I'm Romain. I'm French and Brazilian also. And I work between France and Portugal, where I met Daniel. This is the first work we do together. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. So I am Daniel, and I base in Lisbon, and I'm born in Fortaleza. I am a dancer and a performer also. We met in the course of Lisboa, a program of dance, and then 2 years after we start to do this project.
So the starting point of the project was actually a message from Daniel that wrote me saying, like, let's have a coffee Skype sometime. This coffee Skype took like 2 months to happen, and then Daniel proposed like this idea of making a work together. Like Daniel already had seen me working on the show I presented here on Legende, and that he was helping me on some part of the show, and I was also following his own work, and we thought like, yeah, could be interesting to make like a work. Like Daniel was first thinking about a kind of a conference or a situation of a talk. On this first meeting we had, the first question we had was like, we want to do something together, but we might think that it could not happen. So we had this thing like, we want to do something together, but we have the fear of, or the, how to say? Yeah, we said like, okay, so I think in the talk we said like, okay, but let's try anyway, even if it doesn't happen. We could also take that issues as a starting point, like expectation, like, okay, so our starting point is this work will never happen. And we started to exchange emails for a year or something, like partially like that. And we started to think, to bring different ideas about the future, about how to relate to something we think we don't know if it will happen or not. And it brings also a space to share all our anxieties and wish for the future. Okay. And then came the moment to start the process of creation, which was, the starting point was in last September. We had like 2 weeks of work. And we had like, we speak a lot, as you can imagine, if you saw the performance. And we started to think about the future, about something that was hidden in the present, like future, past, like everything was like quite not here yet. It's like just on the horizon of the thing. It came also from a book we were reading about queer issues and how queerness is not here yet, but it's something that will always be in the reason, something we should look at, like it's hidden. And each time we approach, each time it's getting hidden. And so we needed to find a situation to start the talk and to create the text. And Danielle suggested this situation about being hidden. So the first presentation actually was under the stage. We were reading the text under the stage, and the people didn't know at all where we were in the room, or if it was recorded, or if it was we were outside the room. And that's how we started to speculate on expectations and writing a text, like playing with this tension. Do you want to add something?
My English is not so good, and I am a little bit nervous in this situation. So, but in this point was in the last September, and we did the show in a place in Lisbon, and what we did yesterday, the first part, it's very established. In that moment also, this happened. The text is the same, and then to do the test, we do a lot of work on conversation, and then we have to create collages about these conversations. We record and then we start to re-edit the test. And then after the first part of the work, we make a break, and then we go back to work in November, more 2 weeks.
Yeah. No. And the question about like where we are on the process of the creation. So we had like this month, let's say in 2018, and we restarted to work on it in June, the beginning of June. And the premiere will be in November, some end of November this year. So we are still in process, and we are since yesterday already rethinking things. So for us, it's always quite exciting to show it, and in order to understand how the show works, because even if we are really intimate, let's say, in our experience of creating, this is for us a show that plays a lot with the public also, with this tension about being here, not being here. And in the subject also, like how we are interested in we want to work with situations that are in tension, like where you have both two quite opposite states, like for instance, being present or not present, dead or alive, being visible, invisible. And that's the kind of stories we are trying to bring inside. Like for instance, the Schrödinger cat, or when we tell the story about the cat in the box that is dead or alive. This soldier, which was forgotten in the island. And we are also interested in how all that stories that we tell somehow resonate with ourselves, and how it creates, how it's also really intimate to bring for us this kind of story, like the relation of the personal history and the more general histories.
Does anyone want to start with any sensations or how you experience the piece? Otherwise we can, or questions. Otherwise I've got questions, but does anybody want to start us off? Yeah.
I do have... okay, I do have a question. Well, I really like the show, thank you for it. And it's exciting to know that it's an ongoing process, so it's like, wow. Curious about the title, Weather Forecasts? Yes, because you have the Portuguese translation where weather is tempo or time. And I really relate all the time with time. The whole performance I related with the time, with the past, the present, the future, etc. So I was wondering if, what about the title?
So for us, the translation was not exactly perfect, because in Portuguese, time it's also previsão do tempo is also time is estimated, and then this can be more straight on the point to our intention with the text, with the title. But also previsão do tempo, time for us, I think it's funny because also it looks like a journalistic moment to show and to talk, and then it's a kind of imaginary. Do you want to add something?
No, I think like we decided to let the title, like the direct translation like that, thinking like even the idea of weather forecast bring this thing of thinking about what will happen and the prevision of something. We had some workshop to find title, but we didn't manage to find one, so we prefer to keep the Portuguese and the translation.
Regarding the translation, about how was performing in English for you? How was all the process of translation? And because it looks like that is really, really important too. So how was for you to be performing it in English? Wow, this is very hard.
I know. It's very loud.
So when we understood we were coming here, we decided to make in English. For the translation, we worked with Paula Cashman, which is our dramaturge, and I think I always like translations. Like this is something that's in my work and even my life. It's like something that's going on, speaking several languages, and I think it's also challenging for a text like to be translated and to understand what's inside that you could not already see in the other language. Like we were thinking that. I think it was challenging because it's not a language we speak a lot, both of us. Do you want to add something?
Oh, no, just to say what you said. We learned something more about the test and the idea we have when we do the translation to other language. Was the challenge to us in this point, to myself, was a challenge because it's not my language and it's more easy to do this work as we has a work in progress in Lisboa. But yeah, it's this.
No, and the question came like why we didn't choose to make in Portuguese subtitled with subtitles, and there was a point like a month ago when we restarted to work on it where we wanted it to really be about the voice. So we straight at the beginning decided we prefer to train the English, even if there is some broken aspect of the language, but we prefer not to have any image. Like it's important for us not to, and the written text will turn really like the thing to see. So we made this choice in this relation. After we thought maybe we can be more flexible. And maybe there is something to discover also with this relation of the subtitle. And it was one of the feedback we received yesterday, and that we started to think about like how also if we bring the subtitles inside of the work, how it could be also, there is a game with that also, like start to build on expectation, or like it could be like another layer of the work. But it's how we managed to do it in this moment of the process.
Anybody else? We now have 2 microphones. I've got a question about the audience and your relationship with the audience and how you get. So you said that it's important for you to monitor, to know how the audience is reacting.
No, I didn't say it's
Yeah.
It's important. I think it's important to. No, yeah, maybe it's that. Yeah.
Well, the sense was that you want the experience of the audience is important. My question is the fact that you're not present for so much, and either underneath the stage or behind the stage, and not actually visibly seeing what's going on with the audience.
Yeah.
How do you work? Would you like to be filming the audience to see how they're reacting? Are you curious when you're not present about the presence of the audience?
That's a good question. Because I think even if you don't see, you can feel it. Especially in some rooms where we played, where the chairs make noise. You can hear like some people like impatient, or they're like laughing. Like you always feel what's happening, and if the attention is here or not. It depends also on how we perform the text that day. And yeah, I think we receive the experience of the audience speaking with people after. But yeah, I think it's interesting for us also to speak about this challenge, which is like for the attention, and we receive like different comments, like people that just disappear really quickly, and others that spend their time like making links, thinking, reading the whole piece with like, for instance, with the end, which we do like a little travel inside the piece, this little poem, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I was just interested if you were behind the curtain doing the lines, but also listening, trying to experience the reaction of the audience as it's happening.
I don't know if I can add something more precise than Roman, but I would like to, for us, the connection with the public is important because we have this story about us and we think and we share the thinking. And then in the process we are trying to transform this personal intimacy ideas we have to something common, to something important to people in a not obvious way or to teach something, but we are trying to with the test to make something also with the feelings of the expectation or the, because we somehow we are in a group, we can understand each other somehow, and then maybe we are trying to play with this with the text.
Any other questions? Does anyone? Then I'll continue. I want to know more about camouflage and what different iterations of camouflage you've gone through yourselves in the making of the piece. Because I imagine that it's gone through lots of different variations of camouflage as an idea.
Yeah, and we discovered a lot that we are not using also, but there is all this question of the social camouflage, the camouflage in order to be able to live in a place, like not to reveal something about us in order to feel safe, or yeah. And then as we are also working with our fear and obsession, which are like, for instance, war, atomic bomb, or stuff like that, we were reading a lot, we brought a lot of camouflage coming from war, like for instance the razzle-dazzle, which is a camouflage that was used on boat during the World War I, and that was just like painting lines, like in different diagonals, and making actually really visible boats. But it was like just to deconstruct the perspective of the boat in order to don't understand if the boat was like on this position or this one. So you can't like direct the missile in the direction of where the boat is really going. There is, you wanna?
So we start with we start with a very nice. No, how can I say? We start with idea of camouflage, visual camouflage, but camouflage is not so about visibility. It's something also under or inside, and then this make our question more complex, and we are trying to handle with how to show camouflage, how to talk about camouflage, but in between visual and auditive or personal forms.
It's interesting to create a piece where you are trying to disappear and not be present. That's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you said when the word camouflage came, I started going, "Are they here in the audience? Are they sat amongst us?"
Yeah,
and I
that
started,
was
which is the
that
point.
was some hypothesis we had, like how at some point of the creation we were like, we'll build on different kind of camouflage, like maybe we finish on stage and nobody knows we are on stage, sorry, with the public and nobody knows we are there, or like trying to find different ways to to disappear inside the space. And maybe it's something that will appear like on the following months of work, weeks. But on the process, we needed to have like also a stronger, like Daniel we speak about, a stronger text. Like we needed to manage to build like our conversation in order to, after, reconstruct the travel inside and maybe inside the space. So we are at the point where the text is continuing to expand, and after there is this phase where we want to re-understand how the space will fit. No, it's not fit, but will go in the space. So, for instance, all the situation in the dark now is something which is still a question. We are questioning also the blackout. If we need like a complete blackout, like to completely disappear, we are thinking to not be reading our text, which is something we never questioned before, because we have this.
And those are things from yesterday's performance. That the doing it yesterday has made you think about all of this.
Yeah. It was it came because as the starting point was like doing like a kind of a conference. We didn't had any problem saying like, no, we are reading. Yeah, this is our note. But afterwards we thought like, yeah, complete blackout is like a space we always wanted to experiment, and we need to learn our text, so why not? So just like, yeah.
There's a question from the feedback notes,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, the question is written as, were there elements of absurdism? And would you like, how does absurdism work in this piece? I guess is the question that was asked. Is there absurdism for you?
Is there absurd? Se tem absurdo na peça. I think we don't think about, this is not our starting point. We are not looking to make an absurd piece. We are even not trying to make a funny piece. It's not, no, our intention is to create a space where we question our reality, or I don't know if reality is the word, but we are interested in bringing questions and putting the public in a state of interrogation and reflection of what's happening, what we are proposing, and yeah, and the absurd. I think we spoke maybe more recently about surrealism, but not absurd, I think.
Any last questions, comments? And we'll probably have time for one or two more comments, and then we'll go.
There's a moment towards the second half of the piece where I completely lost any sense of meaning, and I was lost in perhaps translation or just, I wonder whether it's a purposely camouflaged meaning on the work in the second part of the piece when it goes bananas and it starts going a bit surreal, the text, and then I disconnected. So I wonder whether that's something that you do purposely, or is that something you're exploring?
The wish of losing the attention of the progression is not intended, but it's a choice also to switch the kind of conversation we have at a point. We need, I think, to understand how this switch happened, maybe more smoothly. The link for us was, for instance, the bananas. We have a longer text all about it, and for instance, the banana entered. I don't even remember. Ah, yes. We were trying to bring take elements from the first text. For instance, the bananas is what the soldier were eating in the bush during these 30 years. So we just take the banana and we start to build on. And banana is an object, a fruit, which is linked to many countries, to colonialism, to the, you want to say? Have a list? No. To colonialism, to, this is like a worldwide object, like you have bananas everywhere, like this question of radioactivity, and we are a bit fascinated about this kind of objects that could contain so many links with what we are speaking of during the show. So our wish also during the future time is like maybe to bring, like maybe there is this wish of another part which is maybe helped with images, like all the bananas, something like that. And we have this link, yes, with poem we wrote about our identities and fruit. It's like starting to deconstruct also what we are. Like, I'm a fruit, but I'm also something else. And this question of the identity we didn't spoke about now, but this is something that is crossing since the beginning of we work together. This is something we always conscious about, and where we come from. When I speak Portuguese, I have like this weird French, Portuguese, Brazilian accent that our voice in Portuguese mix sometime. So yeah, there is this point where we want to arrive where we switch to another kind of expression. Yeah. But we don't want to lose the public. It's not the wish.
Thank you.
No, I just wanted to know if, and I guess the answer is yes, that the choice to have that kind of space was because of the next performance, so to have this kind of curtain very in front of the audience, because it was, I mean, influencing the way that you see at the performance itself. And then the fact that since in the performance there's just basically you talking and you wanted to talk in the darkness, but then you have like security exit lights and they are very present, and so you don't have total blackout, and this gives the whole blackout stuff a completely different impression, because if you work in the blackout and you just hear voices, that's it, then it's one thing, but if you can see something, then it's a completely different experience. So I was wondering if you thought about this. And
yes, we thought, and ideally we like to play in places where you can see all the walls, like not having this thing like there is a curtain, so I hide behind the curtain or something. No, it's like having like a full space, your frontal to an object on the middle, which we could be behind, but we could be also in another place, and there is this space for imagination for the public also to, when listening, starting to speculate on where we could be. So the ideal would be, yes, an empty stage just with a table and a structure on it, or on top of it, like we could be behind. And the blackout also. We were conscious about it. That's why we thought about the blackout. This morning we were speaking like maybe we need to assume that we need. This is not just the shade; it's the dark, complete. Yeah.
okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Romain and Daniel. I think we're going to stop there for you guys. So, thank you. And we'll go to Silence and Ça Marche. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, give us a bit of context about the piece.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So we are Ça Marche. A part of Ça Marche, because in fact we are 6 in the team. So I'm Nico. I'm the director of the company and the piece. This is Pau, who is sound creator. And then this is Albert, who is the scenographer. But then we also have Uriol, who writes the text and helps us with the dramaturgy, and then Carmen, who does the dressing, costume, well, the design of the dressing and the costumes, and Laura, who is the producer. So we are a Barcelona-based company, but we've been traveling some for the last 3 years. So I've been living in Brussels with Uriol, but now we moved back to Barcelona. And so Silence, above all, is maybe I would say the third part of a trilogy, the trilogy of the sun that we started 3 years ago.
Sorry, the sun? The trilogy of the?
Of the sun, El Hijo, how do you say?
Sun, spelled S-O-N, not
S-O-N.
S-U-N.
No,
Okay.
okay, S-O-N. And so Silence is the third part of it. It was a trilogy where we wanted to approach the, maybe I would say, the figure of the sun from different angles. So we started with Sabah, in which we approach it, I would say, the idea, maybe the idea of what is the rest of our mother when we are in a relationship with another person. So I love relationship. Then we did Tagol. Tagol was a piece where we wanted to approach the idea of the voice and the father. And then I would say that Silence is a piece where we talk about, well, or maybe we had as a starting point the idea of heritage. Normally what we've been doing for the last 4 years is working with non-professional actors. So in general, for these 3 pieces, we didn't work with professional actors. In Sabah, yes, we worked with a dancer, but we found interesting to work with non-professional actors, because at that time we thought that, well, it suited more what we wanted to say on stage and artistically. So we started working with kids, and for the second and the third part that you saw yesterday, we worked only with kids. It doesn't mean that I would say that our company only works with non-professional actors. It's just that for these last 3 years or 4 years, that was our needs. So what we normally do with Silence is we work with children from the city where we are. So we go normally 7 days before showing the piece, showing the play, and well, we start. I wouldn't say rehearsing with them, because there's a lot of improvisation in the piece. We create dynamics of play and other dynamics, and that's how we start introducing them into the play, which is a play that we would say it's 80% or 70% written down play, or with actual dramaturgy that comes with us, and then 30% tailor-made maybe. So yeah, that's what we do normally. I don't know what else to say. Do you want to say something?
That's okay. We can start.
Yeah, we can
from
start,
there.
Yeah.
Does anyone? I know that you'd be interested in how people experience the piece. Does anyone want to share how they experience the piece? Or how, I mean, I've got a couple of comments. There was one, loved the authenticity of the children playing. And I felt there was danger. So those are two comments, just two of the comments from the feedback forms. Does anyone else want to share a feeling or experience? Tom?
I just wanted to ask where the performers are now and if they were invited to be part of this, and if not, why not, and if that was the decision you made or just because of the circumstances. I just want to know to what degree their involvement is in the process of the work afterwards and beforehand in this sort of a context. So not about the show, but yeah.
Well, as a prologue to that, we started Display 2 years ago. We work with 5 children from Barcelona, well, from Terrassa, that is a city very near Barcelona. And we created the piece from scratch with them. It doesn't mean that they were part of the creation of the dramaturgy or the set and those elements or those ideas, but they were like the how we'd say the ones who put them in motion or started them so that we would see if they would work or well, and so on. So when I think that there are two paths at the same time. We don't think that they should need to know what is going on in a whole in the whole. So we basically, as they're playing, and maybe there's a bit of an experiment and what you see that it's very different. The process that they will have with the artistic process or the result of the play. So what we do normally is we let them go through it as an experience in where we meet each other, they meet each other, we start talking about the piece, but in very basic terms or things, and then we let them play and we let them do that. And then we've got this other path, which is maybe the more artistic path, in where we need children and we have an idea of what we want to do with them, and so well, we take that path. So yeah, that's why I feel it. Yeah, I feel that what they've been doing for this last week, it's an experience. It's something that maybe they haven't done before, and for me, that's okay, or it's fine like this. I don't know. I'm not sure if I answer your question. Okay. Yeah.
I wanted to know, we were talking a little bit about this yesterday evening, but they are kids, you told me from 5 to 8, 7, more or less, kind of.
In general, we want to work with kids from 5 to 7. In this case, we had one girl that she was 9 years old, but the other went down, yeah, to 5 to 7.
Because my question regards this, how do you manage, I mean, they are kids, they are playing, they are in their world, not being affected by a performance on a stage, but does it happen to them, to you, when you are practicing it, that they become aware of doing this for someone that is looking at them? and then maybe they would feel censored in a way or affected by that. That happen. How do you manage that? Because they are kids, but then if they become aware of that, the magic can end, right? I don't know.
No, I think they're always knowing that they are being looked at. Always. I don't think that even if you think that they are like by themselves, they know that there's something, or there's someone watching or something. And then it is true that until you are 6, maybe 7, you have another notion of time and of this idea of seeing and being seen. So it's easier that, for instance, when we started the play, we worked with children a little bit older, and it was a very different experience when we ended the play. That is why we started 2 years ago, but we've been doing versions and restructuring the piece, and that is why we went down also, because we needed that, and we couldn't have it with older children.
Then doesn't this like change a little bit? I don't know, maybe the authenticity that you might be looking for from children, because if they are aware that they are acting, they are not, they don't have that anymore, like they are children. They become actors in a way.
With the children that you saw yesterday, you mean, or with?
Yeah, in general. In the way you work. I don't know if that's something you question or.
Yeah, for sure, a lot. It was something that when we began creating the play, we didn't think quite well, so that's why we decided to change children and going down. Yeah. And from the beginning, we try not to tell them. Well, not to tell them. They know that they will be playing, but we try to make them not think too much about that. Yeah. That is why we try not to rehearse. We try not to. How do you say acotar?
Stretch.
Yeah, to stretch rehearsals, or to make them rehearse things once and once more. We do a lot of things that doesn't involve this things that they will do in the play, so that they just get the sense of freedom, or the sense of sometimes they were saying freestyle, and that's what. So yeah. But you said something at the beginning, and I wanted to answer you, but I don't remember.
Yes, the thing, with children being actors, it's always, a curious thing, but I understand that you keep to make it playful.
Yeah.
As playful as possible.
Yeah.
So maybe the balance is still there.
Yeah, and we try to create a balance too, because we find interesting also that they know that there's someone watching. Because that's an important thing of the play too. The adult who is watching, or the adult who is watching, and how do we create a relationship between stage and this look from the outside? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So I understand from your last answer that when you use older children, you had conflicts, and there were times when I thought, is there going to be some bullying here or other tension? Had you laid down rules about that, and was it different for the younger children? That's my first question. And the second one was about the surtitles, which I found them too high and too small, and I didn't notice them coming on. So I was watching the thing, and I suddenly, oh gosh, I've missed it. And that happened several times. I don't know how you can resolve that. So those are my two.
Okay. Well, as we do lots of playing and activities, we we can watch them, we can see what they're doing, how their personal. Eh? Yeah, I didn't have to intervene a lot because I didn't want to intervene. Sometimes you have to intervene, but I think that first you need to see how it's their behavior and their personalities. Because, sorry? Yeah. Because sometimes it seems that they will hurt each other or that they will, but in fact, no, they're just playing and. Yeah, it won't happen. So yeah, it's very interesting because when you rehearse, you are like that. You are like, oh, should I intervene, or should I say something, or should I? And I think we need to be very careful about that, because if not, I think the play won't work, and they won't have the space. And concerning the subtitles, normally we have the subtitles lower. But, we didn't have time to, yeah, my apologies. No. Maybe that's true, yeah, maybe. Yeah, well, we haven't used them before because we haven't done the play in English before, yeah.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I want to ask a question, which is coming out from here. You've come to a feedback cafe, and all we've talked about is the children, and not about the play. We've talked about the experience of the children. What is that like as artists who make a piece, but then the conversation that is happening is about welfare and children's experience, not the piece itself?
Well, as I was talking before about the idea of what's the relationship between the stage and the audience, I think maybe.
And is this something that happens a lot? That actually people want to talk to you about the children and.
But it does. Yeah.
Not as a positive or negative. It's
I know.
just an interesting thing that's happened.
It doesn't happen each time we do the show, because sometimes people is more concerned about I don't know, the idea or the another kind of approach, more I don't know, maybe intellectual or adult. I'm not sure how to say it. And sometimes no. Sometimes they just stick to the action and to what is going on there. But as I see it as a kind of ongoing play, which is not yet finished. So I'm not sure yet if we are approaching it. I don't want to say correctly, but if there is something that isn't working with the other part, that we should adjust or, yeah.
Or maybe it's just the performers that we saw yesterday were so engaging and so incredible that maybe that's why we want to talk about them.
Yeah, maybe yes, maybe no.
You had a.
I'm going to make it about the children again, annoyingly, after what we just said. But I wondered if any of the performers knew each other before this week, or before your rehearsal process, because it seemed like they had a great chemistry and they had there's a great familiarity between them all. And I wondered if they didn't know each other already, did you take steps to create that familiarity and to help them all bond before you started making the piece? And what was that like?
They didn't know each other. Maybe the two older have seen each other once, but they didn't know each other a lot. They were quite shy the first day, but I think that their children, they start playing and they forget everything else, and they just start understanding themselves. They were good children, and it wasn't hard to make them be like that. For instance, we did it in Spain, and we did another play in the second part of the trilogy in Spain, Valencia, and they weren't so synchronized or so together, and it's okay also to have that. I mean, we won't try to make them be a group if it doesn't work. Because we need to accept like the energy of that group, and that's it. Yeah. But in that case, it wasn't difficult, not at all. The first day they did well. Yeah, they were at the hour of the first day. It was okay. It was fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the tree, because from what I gathered in the text and the image of the tree that was almost a monster more than a tree, I wanted to know what was the meaning you wanted to convey in the contrast between what is being said in the subtitles and the actual image that is almost going to destroy the kids. One of them fall under it and started shouting, "Help, help." So just wanted to know about that relationship. It was a tree, yeah?
Well, we've got different ideas of what's that.
All right.
For me, it's an octopus.
An octopus?
Without head, yeah. But for him, it's a tree. Well, the root. Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah. What? Oh, and it was my black sock. Okay. Yeah. And something else. Well, I see the play as a constant war or warfare in a kind of way. So, I think that the stage has to be something like a kind of a tension. Has to have a kind of tension. So that is why we try always to have something that is going in another direction of what's going on or what's being explained. Maybe I would say that about the inflatable, and also I wanted to say another thing about that. Well, there's an idea that it's around the play that asks itself how can we create something for ourselves, or how can we desire for ourselves. And I think that in order to do that, we need to take action and put our body in it. And maybe that's why this idea of something that is going towards me, and we need to push it, or we need to do something. Maybe we don't have the tools, and that's one of the main questions. So if we don't have the tools, how can we succeed, or we can go straight to the future, or I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We changed the voice. Now we are going to talk about Tom's work. We saw the first night of the festival on Tuesday night, and it's I Promise You that tonight. So, Tom, could you please tell us something about your...
Hi. Yeah, I suppose it's the second show I've ever made. We made it in about just under a year, from sort of the first version of like all the texts and the ideas for the effect sort of coming together as sort of, oh, this could be a show. And this instance here at Beef Festival is the first time all of the aspects of the show have come together sort of as they should be, or to the full capacity that we sort of imagined. So we performed a work in progress of it for 3 nights in London, but with loads less tech and on a stage sort of this size. So this is the first time we've done it to the sort of scale that we had envisioned. And I've been working on the show with someone called Peder Kirk, who's been doing direction and dramaturgy and worked to make the show with me. Unfortunately, he can't be here. So, yeah, we've been working on the show together. And it started off, I suppose, as lots of texts about seemingly disparate things that then I started to notice had similarities or sort of some sort of a thread between them that was either through imagery or through sort of memory or science or the voice of the text. And then the series of sort of actions I'd learnt and had developed, and then me and Peder, I sort of presented that to Peder and was like, okay, here's something, and Peder helped me get rid of 30 pages of stuff that wasn't relevant and piece together what actions fit against what texts, and trying to find and tease out a common theme and what things needed to be sort of amplified and what things needed to be toned down. And I suppose that's where we've ended up here. Yeah. And I suppose I'm aware that there's many themes in the show. And I think one thing that I'd be interested in getting out of this perhaps is what themes seem to resonate the most and what things didn't. And so there's still stuff to change within the show, but it feels like it's become a show now. Should I say more? No?
Perfect, thank you. Does anyone want to get some question, add some comments? You just asked, like, you would like to know which of these themes were like more seeable during the performance for the audience. So if there's someone that wants to give his feedback in that question, even he's already said a question. No? Yeah, Daniel got here one of the comments of the feedback postcards. I was reading them before as well. And it says, I can only describe this show as a weirdly hypnotic. And it was said in some of the other feedback postcards with the hypnotic, the trance. There was people describing it as an intellectual trance as well. So as it's a topic that is going in lots of opinions of the people, I suppose it's one of these informations you're looking for. Maybe the trance and the hypnotic thing is something that it's appearing. And as I saw your show last year, I think that's something that was as well there till some point. So how do you feel about this? I mean, is your intention now?
Yeah, it's one of those things that kind of we thought about and talked about a while ago, and then maybe haven't done, but it's kind of somehow stayed there. So a lot of the language used is taken from, some of it's taken from hypnotic inductions, so scripts for inductions. So the sort of sinking down deep, sound asleep is like the most used phrase in hypnotic inductions ever. So there was definitely an element of sort of using that language and also, swinging a bucket around at the front of the stage and that. But I suppose we kind of thought about using that as a way to do other stuff or talk about other stuff or get to a particular place within that world. And maybe we sort of the character of the hypnotist wasn't there on purpose, but we kind of were using aspects of that. But there's also, for me, a sense of sort of self-hypnosis going on in the show, of sort of, I've got to get myself to a certain state so that I can do this thing. and almost as if sort of I've got to work up to it. So the first time I walk across the glass, it's almost as if I've done it a million times before, and it's kind of, you know, that's just what I do and what I keep on seeming to do. And then the second time, it's almost as if I sort of have to accept something or go through something or take on a different state so that I can break that sort of cycle. Yeah, and the language is very much, there's parts of the show that are very much sort of, you're not meant, that I speak very quickly and lots of things jump around and they sort of create a sense of image or a sense, a feeling that you can kind of hang on to moments and words but not necessarily follow in, you know, a linear way. But I think there was some feedback about that was sometimes that works in places and sometimes that's kind of distracting. So that's one thing that I'm aware of with regards to sort of text and delivery and yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I think there was also written in some of the feedback postcards, but you have a very, I think as well, that you have a very hypnotic presence on the stage. And also I think with your voice, you're speaking very low, like the tone of your voice. So I think it goes a little bit more for that sense. And also the kind of scenical work you're doing, like, you know, like taking all these risks and playing with all this stuff, I think it can also make people take that distance of the hypnotic thing. But I don't know, there was also like, now you've said like, you're aware that, or you think that someone has told you that at some moments of the piece, it doesn't work, this hypnotic presence, whatever. There was one feedback postcard I read that says that you were a little bit overacted. That do you think that's a relation with that? It's part of the hypnotic, because, I mean, I don't think you were overacted, but there was, I just remember that when you say that, and I think it's interesting to, maybe you think it's related or not to the point.
I think part of that is performing in a room that big and being on my own on that stage and trying to figure, and not mic'd, and trying to figure out how to do that just as a performer. There's a bit of that going on, I think, of how much do I need to make this, you know, and kind of figuring out the balance of, you know, the showman character and the skeptic character, and then the bit in between where I'm having realizations. So figuring out, you know, maybe I am overacting some of that stuff sometimes, and I'm working on that. But I think there's also part of that that's written into the show that is very much a sort of a knowingness. I know that you know that I'm pretending to be this sort of person who's trying to sell you something, and we all know that. And I'm taking on that voice as a way of sort of acknowledging that. But to what extent, yes, is still being, in some places needs to be balanced out, perhaps.
I don't think so. It was just written, you know. Even I think I was wondering now, do you feel a character when you're performing this piece? Because I mean, with the kind of text you are in, this kind, like I know you, you know, with this kind of text, for me it could be very difficult to feel as a character inside there. You know, like do you work as a character? Do you think about?
We don't call it a character. It's me, but it's, you know, versions of me, or but it's that thing of, you know, the magician with a box is like, as soon as I stand there with a box on stage and people might have seen my show before or read the copy, then that's already set up. So there is a sense of I'm already a character whether I like it or not, you know, and it's what I do with that, and is and how much of that character, maybe there's too much of a character on stage and not enough of me, I'm trying to figure out ways of still having that sense of sort of, you're not just watching a play about a man who is having some difficulties walking on glass with a magic box and a blowtorch, you know, it's like trying to somehow bring a realness to that and a sort of personal element to that. And there is a massive personal element to all of the stuff that I've written in the show, you know, sort of experiences or things I've remembered or misremembered or things I've thought I've known for a very long time and then they turn out to not be true. But they come from a place like that, but that might not translate on stage. So maybe there is a character, but not intentionally, but I am aware of that, and I'm still figuring out how much of that needs to happen when, I think.
Does anyone, I'm talking, I'm like throwing questions on this.
Yes, one thing is about, maybe it was just a problem of mine, but speaking of trying to take your voice lower in order to get this hypnotic point of view and not using the microphone, I had some trouble in understanding you sometimes, and it's a pity because, I mean, the great part of the job in your piece is understanding what you're telling. I'm aware that not being the English my mother tongue, maybe this is part of the issue, but still, I don't know if you ever considered working with a microphone, like, I don't know.
I think in some instances, yes, like there is bits that are not meant to be followed, but that's a separate thing. And then I think there's, we thought about using a microphone, but then sort of me with a little microphone wrapped around my ear, marching up and down stage. If I wanted to use one, I'd want it to be invisible. And also, this is the first time the places we've done this before have been this size. Okay. So there's been absolutely no need for one, and I can talk like this. And so, yeah, I think there is definitely scope for trying to find a way to amplify me, but not, and you kind of maintain that sort of deep hypnoticness, but without it sort of me coming across as like a literal salesman, you know, on the street, or like a street preacher, because it's obviously that, but I don't want it to be too much that, you know.
And the second thing was, I remember your show from 2 years ago, and I remember this constant feeling of being in a tension, and every object, everything that you managed on stage, I was like, oh my God, he's going to do something crazy, something dangerous, and I couldn't feel that. I mean, since I remembered that show, I started your show with this feeling. So when you took the box, I thought, oh my God, what's gonna happen? And then you constantly disappointed this kind of emotion. So I wanted to ask you if you want to detach yourself from that kind of stage experience, if it was on purpose or if it was just something that happened in the process.
Yeah, I think it's something that just sort of happened, as well as people watching this show with the light of the other show. And this show is quite a lot different, I think, in the way I sort of treat things. But that's just what happens. I suppose the constant disappointment, I definitely do set a lot of stuff up that then doesn't happen. Or sort of it happens but in a different way, and whether that payoff is counterbalanced by the text or the other things that do happen, I don't know if that balance is right yet, and that's still something that we're talking about and looking into, and it's great to hear that sort of that. I think sometimes the quality and way I treat objects in this show sometimes has to be a bit almost as if I know this object really well and I'm just going to pick it up and I know exactly how this works, and it is a prop. Whereas in the other show, you know, there's a sense of tension throughout the whole thing, and sometimes I don't think that would play in my favor in this show alongside some of the stuff that want to talk about. You know, the glass kind of just happens to be there, and then it kind of appears with the light and disappears, or it, you know, it's definitely a different world, and that sort of trying to find way, and there's different worlds within this show, and it's shifting between those different worlds and realizing when we're in the room or when we're in the glass, and I don't really know what I'm saying, but yeah, I think it would be good to hear what that disappointment is part of the show. It's part of the show because there's I talk about, you know, there's these claims, and then obviously they're just tricks. Obviously it's just a trick. These miracles are just tricks, and that's part of the point of the show. But sometimes that works, and sometimes, you know, that claim isn't fulfilled, and isn't counterbalanced by the text or the other stuff that does happen. And it'd be nice to figure out when and where those things are happening, and what things can be, you know, got rid of, or what things are set up that actually would be worth fulfilling and worth, you know, the payoff. I think, yeah.
I have curiosity to know how you work with the text that you have written, because you said that you have a big amount of text and you cut it down, and the relationship between those texts and the decision you make to include the parts that you have left in the show with the manipulation of the objects, and how you build that connection between the text and the other stuff. And also regarding what just Claudio was saying about the disappointing kind of moments, that I think is very interesting to build up in a show. But you think, I was wondering if it is something that it happens because we have already seen the other show, or is because it's there, or maybe you need to put more on that to make it more obvious, because I was wondering that all the time with myself. I don't know if it was because I saw already your previous show, or so. Yeah, it's just.
So I think the stuff with the text. I think there's text that I write, and then when I read it out, I end up reading it out in a very particular way. So the stuff about lightning, and the stuff about there's lots of text in it that is emotive, and then poetic, and then there's the text that is very sort of instructive or just factual. And the factual stuff seems to, if I'm talking about facts and science, then I can't really be doing something illusory at the same time, or sometimes they don't quite match up. So sometimes. And then there's those texts. Then there's the poetic sort of emotive ones, and then there's the patter, the script to the trick. This is a box, and when we print out all the stuff that I've written, and we'll have all of the objects in the room. So I'll have a hammer, a blowtorch, a box, a bunch of glass, and we'll line all of the texts up and put the objects on top of the texts, and then I'll read them out whilst doing the thing. And sometimes interesting stuff happens, so I'm walking on the glass and I start saying this thing, and I then start saying it in a very particular way, and then we're like, oh, so that's coming out of me, that's a sort of cathartic thing. You're not meant to follow every single line, that's just needs to come out of me at this point, and then I end up lying on the glass, and I'm like, oh, well, that's me drowning, so I've just drowned. And then we talk about drowning in that state. So we kind of match them up and then see what fits and what doesn't. So we have sort of pieces, and then we will line those pieces up in an order, in a sequence, to create a sort of arc or a line that somehow takes you on a journey of sort of realizing those threads, but they're not so obvious until hopefully they all sort of come together at the end, perhaps. So that's how I deal with the texts, I think. There was also texts that were thrown away, that were texts that were cold reading texts, texts that were about sort of reading other people, and there was work with, trying to read audience members and do a bit of that, but I think that's a whole other show. And then, what else am I?
How about disappointing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I suppose it's about making that clear enough that I'm going to let you down, even though I say that I'm not, but really making a point of knowingness that will happen at some point, so that then when it does happen, it's kind of like, oh, of course, that was what was going to happen all along. But at the moment, it doesn't quite set that up at the top of the show for that letdown to be earned later on. And we're trying to find a way to do that through the text, or maybe there needs to be that sense, and then there's a kicker at the end where it's like, oh, but actually here's a miracle, or but actually I can do this, or we can do this all together at the end. And there's been talk of that throughout the whole process of making of the show, and there is still talk of that, and there's still a sort of, we're trying to find out what that is at the moment.
So it made me think of, specifically with the glass, and like you were saying, the repetition, it made me think of Sisyphus, or of a kind of purgatory where you were sort of doomed to repeat this specific action.
Yes.
Okay. I wondered if that was something that you had, if that was this very, like a specific example that you had in mind that you put into the show. And I also, if it was, I kind of could feel that was a theme that was there, but I couldn't really quite touch what you were trying to say with it, if that makes sense. So I wondered what that was, if anything.
Yes, so that was something that came up. Not necessarily sort of, it is this, but, it was an idea of, being trapped in a constant loop of doing the same, this is a box, and then and going over the glass and doing the same trick over and over again. And that happens through the text and through doing the thing with the box. And I think it was that happens twice, and then within that, it all starts to crumble. Or there's a realization of, oh, but I'm complicit in this lie to you, even though I'm trying to tell you the truth. Or I've been telling myself this lie all this time. So there was this idea of, hell and heaven and somehow being somewhere in between, and that just through drowning myself, I sort of, break out the back door and go sideways. And where that sideways place is, I'm not sure, but there's a sort of invitation or an offering to sort of take part in that other place, perhaps. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mark, do you want to give us an intro to Compagnie Mouste and the work and the context? If you need to go to the loo, go, but then come back.
So this is, I obviously have a pretty young company because I'm still young, I hope. And so it's kind of, I didn't do so many shows, but, this show was created like in 8 weeks. It's kind of a standard in Switzerland that I regret somehow. It would be nice to have more time, but we don't have a statut d'intermittence or anything like this. I mean, I don't know how it is in your countries.
3 or 4 weeks in the UK.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
You go more effective.
And I don't want to talk so much about like what I do or what I hope that I create doing the thing, because I don't want to direct too much right now, but with pleasure I can. I mean, I do things for a purpose, and I have reasons for why I do what I do. But I don't want to say this right now, maybe because maybe it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And I know it's. We've been talking for 2 hours, and we're all tired a bit. But if you want, it would be very nice for me to know, like, how would you, how do you say, résumé? Do sum up the performance you saw yesterday, if you saw it, because I'm just curious. I performed it in one other venue before. That's only the second venue it goes to, and it was, yeah, and it was different, very different setting, and so I'm still curious to know if you have anything to say, or we just go on questions. I don't know. Do you have?
Oh, Paul.
I wondered if there was, because there are very obvious silent clowning references and influences in the piece, as Keaton especially, and things like that, but is there a deliberate reason why you've avoided mentioning that in the copy?
Why I didn't?
Yeah.
Because it happened very late in the creation. It wasn't meant to be that style at all for a long time. And like all the actions and all the ideas were here, but I thought that the piece will have a totally another style. But actually, it ended up being this one, and I thought it's pretty appropriate, and I really like it, and I love silent movies, and I mean, it is obviously a very big influence, but I didn't think it will go there. But I think that now I could mention it. I mean, now that I know a bit more what it is.
I think, especially in the UK as well, sort of like-for-like references are very helpful to audience members. As you know, this show will be like whatever is always helpful. And then the other thing I've not quite thought about, but I did see it in the other venue, and it's very different. The space adds, the greater space here makes a lot of the scenes feel very different, especially the desk routines and things like that. That really benefits from being brought forward, I think. So,
yeah. If I would have to do it today, I would do a different setup. I just copied where I was placed in this other venue, and the audience was like
very close
here all the time, like really super close. And I just recreated the same setting that I had. But I think it wasn't a very good idea. But also, I had to. Now I know, I think. But I also I enjoy very much this bigger scale for other moments, and I think that I can really make a good use of a large stage for many things, and I just have to adapt the smaller. I mean, yeah. That I like also the lights can help, obviously, always, but to go through very big to very small, to go from Google Map, zoom out, you see the whole world, to into your room, you know, like this. And I think in a large stage is easier to create something like this.
Yeah, I agree. When we're meant to see everything, it works really well in the bigger space. The problems are on the focus when the spotlights need to come on.
I will give you this in 1 second, Judy. Just before, a Korean visitor said, the performer made me expect more and more unordinary things out of ordinary situations. I think this sort of thing is art! Exclamation mark.
Yeah, nice.
Yes, I wanted to say that, and I don't know what my question is really, but last time you were balancing on your chair with knives, which was pretty lethal, potentially. So were the weights, presumably. They would have done you quite a bit of damage, but they were much funnier.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's much funnier. Which one was funnier?
This one.
This one, okay. That's funny because when I perform the other show, people laugh much more than when I do this one. because it's much more dangerous.
Yes.
And there is kind of, you have to let it out in some ways. And like, I've been performing the other one 2 weeks ago in a circus tent, 300 people, all drunk at midnight. And I really tried to be the less funny I could, like really, like totally dramatic. And it was like, "Ah!" Like super, super noisy. So in a way, I play more with those codes of a silent movie or clown or thing like this. I try to make them as not obvious as possible, but the code is very obvious, but I try to not overdo it in a way. But in a way, I think it's more playing with the code of being funny than really being funny. Or maybe it's also need a bit of time of adaptation. I don't know. I appreciate if you if you thought it was funny, but
yeah. I wanted to. First of all, I sort of felt this similar to Paul, that the bigger moments, the more physical comedy, were the things that reached me more, and I enjoyed them. The swing, the seesaw. But I found it interesting that we've had 2 shows, one with axe throwing, one with a knife. Tom's work. I'm just sort of interested what's going on. What's the story behind? Because knife throwing has always been a part of circus and but usually it's one person throwing a knife at someone else. But there's an element of stuff happening to us, you guys taking the other person out and doing it to yourselves, so I'm just wondering what's going on with sharp objects penetrating or not penetrating, and where's that coming from? And I can ask Tom and I can ask Mark. It's a shame we don't have one shot here, because it would be really nice to have them here, because it seems to be, we've had 10 shows and I've missed the first 2, but we've had 10 shows and 3 of them have involved danger. And I know circus is built on danger, conflict, but I'm interested in, is there something behind it at the moment?
well, I have my explanations.
Yeah.
But
Well, I want to hear your explanations.
It might not be the one for everyone. I think that it just somehow feels good to be in danger. And if you don't provoke it to yourself, you will never have it in life. Like you can live without any type of risk your entire life, because the world is made like this now. I mean, especially, I don't know how it is in Birmingham, but where I live and where I usually travel to, I mean, you really have to do something to feel a bit something happening. Or like people take drugs, they like get super drunk very often. I mean, this is also another way of feeling.
It's a response to this world that is sanitized and safer and safer and safer.
Yeah. And so I guess in that sense that there is this excitement of like adrenaline, extreme sport also, they go high. UFC never went so big than now, like as much as the security grows, the more we have the need of extreme things, or that we can live through other people like UFC, or that we can do by ourselves by like extreme sport, drugs, things like this, or like I don't know how it is here, but like fitness in Switzerland, like one every 2 houses a fitness club. I mean, like there is people need to go to some places to have something that is not anymore in life.
Well, there's always been a tradition, gladiators, even Jackass 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to see it three times.
But it was always
here
for
in 3 days.
But somehow it was always for the higher. No, I'm not sure. No, nothing. I didn't say anything. Do you want to say something?
But there was also the moment, just talking about Ça Marche yesterday, the moment where suddenly one of the girls picked up the stick, and we all thought, please don't let this. So far, it was all safe. The heart, the intestines, no damage is going to happen. And then the stick was picked up, and there was a moment where the whole audience went, they're playing really nicely, but this could go wrong. An accident could happen. So it's just, and there's something in us that is clearly responding to this in audiences, but I'm sort of interested in, where it's coming from as artists. So you've explained. Tom, do you have a...
But I guess it's also to...
and to the program, and it's a question to the programmers. What are you...
We did
Come on,
things
programmers,
separately.
you can talk about it.
I think Mark responded really well. I think danger, it happened last year. We also had a couple of shows that were on danger, and I think it's not necessarily danger. It's because in this year's shows, I wouldn't say they are really in danger compared, but I think last year you were more in danger than this year.
Yeah, there is just one thing that, like
the knife is the only...
It's more radical.
Well,
but yeah.
Yeah.
No, but you're right, it's less dangerous.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about, so I'm just making it up, but I think it's not only in circus. So, for example, we had a performance by Ivo Dinchev a year ago also, where there wasn't necessarily a danger, a physical danger, but there was an emotional danger of putting yourself on stage and showing what you're doing for money. And I think that's something that is being questioned in performance nowadays, about the relationship between the performer and the act of performance itself. And that limit is being pushed in circus through danger, and in performance through different means, and so on. So it feels that in circus there is an element that is being explored about how to put yourself in harm's way somehow. But it's, as you say, since Gladiators, it's always been there.
But it's true that at least what we what we have realized is when we open the call for proposals, we receive more of this kind of work. And of course, in that sense, there is something going on. And as the festival kind of responsibility also is to show what is going on in terms of what are the interests of the artists, what are they doing. So, yeah.
I mean, I've been programming a festival, or I did program a festival for 12 years of Latin American work, and never ever did we have a proposal that was physically dangerous, but some of the proposals were politically dangerous. So there is maybe something about political, we're all okay politically. I mean, maybe not if you're Belarusian, but maybe the physical danger is an access to, because we can say anything and our governments aren't going to put us in prison. So that's maybe a thought. Tom, do you want to say anything, or about the stick? No? Great, it was great. Okay. If you have anything to say about
I think
this moment.
It was that if we think about it in terms of vulnerability and not danger, and that obviously it's dangerous, but it's that we're putting ourselves into a vulnerable position on stage, not just emotionally like actors do, but physically in front of you in the room. And I suppose if we think about it in danger, often that sort of maybe sometimes clouds things in that we talked about this a lot when we were on tour, that it's not like that's the first time we've done that thing, and it's not like Mark hasn't put in, hours of sort of precision to make sure that that goes right. So I think it's enacting a vulnerability on stage and just in maybe a new context. And also, performance artists have been doing all of this stuff for years and years in other places, just not on a stage with some nice lights and people sat in rows. So it's just recontextualizing actions that people have been doing forever. But then, you know, that throws up loads of other stuff. But yeah, that's my add-on to that.
Anyone else got any other comments or thoughts about Promises of Uncertainty? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Yeah, thank you. It was a tribute to. It's a trick that I was doing.
I'll just repeat the question because some people didn't hear, which is why did you put the spoon up your nose? Was it a tribute to Tom, or you've just said it was a tribute?
It is both. It's a trick I was doing before I met Tom, but he kind of brought it back to me, and it's also, I've always been interested in kind of illusions or things that shift. You think that everything is normal, and out of a sudden, something that you think you know how it works a bit differently. Like this is my vision of illusions of magic or something. This, and I'm pretty bad at it, but I love it, you know. And so for me, this is also one of those things that you watch and you're like, is this just like, how does that work? But it seems that there's no trick, and you're like, is it like really? And so in this, collapsing spoon. And
is it just practice then? Putting something up your nose that you don't actually go into science?
They'll never tell you.
Try it out.
Try this at home.
I've survived this long, no thanks.
Yeah.
Any more? Any other questions? You got a question? You do, okay.
Oh, I just want to share one story because this talk about danger or self-damage make me think of a story of a friend, and she's working in Rio de Janeiro in a favela with Lia Rodrigues company. And then she worked there for more or less 7-8 years. And we met in Lisbon. And then she talked this story about when a friend of her, also in the company, Vomi, his name, goes to work in France. What they felt in the studio was this feeling of the difference working in a favela and working in a studio in Europe or Montpellier or Angers. And there in Rio, the problem, the question, the urgency, it's all around, it's here, and it's something we felt in different way. We cross our body, it's with this. And there, it's something for what she say was something they need to create this kind of feeling, this kind of urgency. And this was the questions when they start to work in Europe somehow with the structure, what we have, what they have there. So I just make question because it's a very open question, like this feeling, how to engage yourself with the limits. So what's the necessity of the limits to our own lives, and how this is good to feel free or feel live. And sometimes we lose this feeling, but I think for me, this conversation touched a very context point of society somehow. What is the necessity of some societies? Yeah.
Just to bounce super quickly, I was 1 month in creation in Maré in Rio, and it was like, as you know and as many people know, like it is kind of a different surrounding that we're used to here, and it was the best month of my life somehow. I felt extremely alive. I mean, I don't say it's great. It's I go and live at the favela and everything, but still there is really something like biologically chemistry of the body that reacts to danger and to. That is really, it's amazing. I was sleeping nothing. I was drunk every night. I had energy like you cannot imagine. I was really like for 1 month, and yeah. Yeah, everything influences. Every experience you do that is a bit strong does influence your work, no, in a way. Yeah. I think it's questions I had in my head before, but like there I experienced it for 1 month. This thing of you have to watch out all the time, and energy is there.
Sometimes they need to stop. This was years ago, because now the situation in that place, Maré, Lilia Rodrigues, they are a long time ago, no? Now.
Yeah.
But then in the beginning, when they start to work there, suddenly they need to stop the rehearsal to go down and follow, to be a shot.
Yeah, 1 month ago they had to do again.
Yeah, because
it
it happens
And
all
when
the
I was
time.
there was shooting in the street, really in front also.
Yeah.
Like it's still now.
Yeah, my first time when I arrived there to show a piece also was my first time I saw an arm like on the street and people walk around like, wow. And well, I was also, wow. Yeah.
We're going to do one last question from Paul, and then we're going to call it a day.
So we were talking about tributes and your tribute to Tom, and I was thinking about the knife drop, and is that a tribute to the knife drop in Take Care of Yourself?
Yeah.
Because what I was thinking, I was then wondering if thrown away a little bit in this piece, because in Take Care of Yourself, it's a brilliant end to the piece,
Yeah.
but moments later, we realize it's a trick. And then the knife drop in this piece is very, very real, and that element of danger is greater. But I wonder if that's only important if people have seen both pieces.
Can I just add that for me, I didn't have danger because I saw the red dot, and I thought it's going to fall down there. There's no danger whatsoever. So for me, that moment, I didn't feel it had danger. So it had the red dot, or we didn't see it, then I would have felt, a completely different setup.
It could be.
Hang on, I'm going to add to that as well, which is the red dot on your face is good, but when it's on the book, it loses the danger.
Okay, yeah. But it's funny because, like, I am afraid. In this moment, I am afraid. Like, it is actually, this thing is the most dangerous thing I ever did on stage. Because, like, for example, the setting, now it's 7 meters high. If the laser moves even like 1 degree, it moves 10 centimeters down, it lands next to the book. And so we were really, like, we were going with the genie up and to fix it like super properly. And I was really saying to everyone, super important, no one walks upstairs anymore. If you move upstairs, it's gonna move just a bit. It's not, and it's the last thing that I check before the audience come in. So in a way, I also think that it's kind of funny that that people see it as a safe thing, and actually it's really like, oh Jesus, for myself. But it could be, and maybe it will become like this. It could become invisible if the laser is more the color of the book, for example. I would see it, you wouldn't see it.
Or that you play with the laser that we see.
Yeah.
We see what you've just. Yeah. If we had seen what you've just described, the fact that just by moving the laser a millimeter, the knife falls in your heart, then not that we want to see the knife falling in your heart, but but you know what I mean? If you set up that device, then my expectation would be very different. But I am not aware of the danger that you are. And I see a safety measure in place that makes me feel safe.
But it's also those kind of things that I'm very happy to hear now, because I think I'm gonna perform it. I won't say a lot, but yeah, I have like few gigs after, and I think it's not a totally finished piece, and so I want to
keep on playing with this. And it's really like those information that comes to me now that are like, oh yeah, maybe what I'm interested into is this tension created by the dispositif, by the setting. And so if it's seen like this, I didn't think that it was seen like this. I could actually play with this information and have like a dangling, or have, I don't know, or play with, yeah.
Mark, do you want to just answer Paul's question about,
Oh,
is
yeah.
it important that you see
Yeah.
it? And then we'll
no,
close it.
actually, this creation, I didn't want at the beginning to use physical risk, but I wanted to use settings. Is that correct? Yeah, like things on stage that create attention by promising something to the audience, and so. Yeah, like walking towards a banana peel with an unstable card box pile. That's, I think it's a clear image that is just like, well, normally I should walk in the direction of the banana peel. Well, but like trying to think about when I show you when I present to you something, you already see the future of that thing. And so for me, having the knife over you, nothing is happening at the moment, literally nothing. There's just like someone with something in the hand, like this thing is not dangerous, but you see the promise that I'm telling you that this is going to be used. Like Chekhov, who says that if you put a gun in the second act, it needs to have a shot in the third one, or something like this. I mean, when you present something on stage, you promise that it's going to be used. And so if you bring a knife, and so that's why I used again a knife, because it has this very strong promising element. When you bring one, you know it's going to be used. I'm not going to like, I could play with the expectation and not use it at all as a knife. That could be an option also. But so I used again, but it wasn't to like do a tribute to this other show, but it's just like, yeah. I hope I answered a bit, yeah.
Okay. Thank you everyone for staying and talking and feeding back. Thank you, Mark. And Compagnie Must. And that's it. Obviously, you're allowed to talk to each other afterwards. Sure. No, yeah.
No, just a piece of information. Tomorrow there's an extra workshop that wasn't scheduled in the brochure. It's a workshop by Mohaled Rasim, whose piece you saw 2 days ago. And so if you want to come, the workshop will be at 10:30. It'll last about an hour and a half, just time. Sorry, 10 o'clock, not 10:30, so come earlier for breakfast, and then you'll have time to do the workshop and then see the piece, La Conquista del Polo Sur. That's it, in the door.